Good afternoon. Welcome to House Human Services for Tuesday, May 13th. This afternoon, we are taking a look at a bill that is in our General and Housing Committee, S-127. There is a section in there that relates to our work in this committee. The bill is an act relating to housing and housing development, and we will be reviewing section 6, which is the State Housing and Residential Service Planning Committee report. And we have Cameron from the council. Do you mind joining us? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Quick. All right.
Floor is yours.
Yeah, just in case, we probably would have gone to you, right? All right, good afternoon, Cameron Wood, Office of Legislative Counsel. So I was asked to come in and review this section with you all. Just for some little context, right? There was a housing bill that, was started as a committee bill in House General, H 479. That passed the House, that's over in the Senate, and it's working its way through there. The Senate passed their housing bill as well, S-127, that came over, went to House General. House General, worked on portions of it as well as other committees. House Commerce was working on the sections related to, project-based TIFs, et cetera. The House General Committee voted it out, I believe last week. And I think the bill is currently in House Ways and Means, where they're reviewing it. It was interesting, the two housing bills, the House version and the Senate version, there really wasn't a lot of conflict in between. There were just a lot of differences in what each bill was addressing. For example, the House version of the housing bill had sections related to appeals and appeals of housing development. And, the Senate version did not, but the Senate version had, for example, adding certain protections in public accommodations and unfair housing practices that the House version didn't. So what the House General Committee essentially did was they took the two bills and combined them together into their proposal of amendment that they voted out. And so what I'm going to review with you all today, which is this section 6, and the document that I'm looking at is the version, the proposed amendment that was voted out of House General. And it should be draft 4.1 if you're following along. They're at the top. And this is going to begin on page 17. And so this language here, this study committee and required report was not in the House version of the housing. It was in the Senate version. And so House General is recommending to incorporate this and keep the study committee going. So I'm just going to walk through the language with you all, relatively quickly. I won't go through each of the individual members unless you would like me to. You all have it there, available to you. But there is created a State Housing and Residential Services Planning Committee, and it is intended to generate, and I'm just on the subsection A here, line 11 and 12, to generate a state plan to develop housing for individuals with developmental disabilities. That's the goal of the study committee. And again, you have membership in subsection B, House of Representatives, one member of the Senate, Secretary of Human Services, Commissioner Dale. Moving on to the next page, you have a list of individuals here all the way down to 12, so 12 members in total. And then on line 14, you have subsection C, powers and duties. So the committee shall create an actionable plan to develop housing for individuals with developmental disabilities that reflects the diversity of needs expressed by those individuals and their families, including individuals with high support needs who require 24-hour care and those with specific communication needs. The plan shall include, we're at the bottom of page 18, moving to the top of page 19, a schedule for the creation of at least 600 additional units of service-supported housing, the number and description of the support needs of the individuals, anticipated funding needs, and a recommendation for changes in state laws or policies that are obstacles to the development of housing needed by individuals with Medicaid-funded home and community-based services. Then subsection D here has the assistance of the Department of Housing and Community Development. However, the committee, upon request, the Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living has to provide an analysis of the current state of housing in Vermont for individuals with development disabilities, and to the extent available, an analysis of the level of community support needed, and then a report on November 15th, 2025. And then finally, meetings, this is all kind of standard boilerplate language that we have in all of our study committees here from the office, but the Secretary of Human Services calls the first meeting before July 15th. Committee selects a chair. Majority of memberships constitutes a quorum. Committee ceases to exist on November 30th, 15 days after their report. And then the subsection G and H are just compensation language for individuals who are not otherwise compensated for their time, compensation available. And then subsection H, the per diems are only available in the instance there's an appropriation for those purposes. And then that is the conclusion of section 6 at the bottom of page 20.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Excellent, Bishop.
It's been noted that I often ask 2 questions, so now I always have to come up with a third. I don't want to be cliche.
That's not a chance.
Just to confirm, the yellow with respect to the membership, the addition of AG, that was housing in general added that.
Yes, that is I believe that's the only yellow, maybe H. I think they added, I don't think the Senate had the language about the per diems are only eligible if, if there's appropriated funds. I think House General added that.
Okay.
But yes, sir, to answer your first question, House General did include under the membership, the last member, one member appointed by the Associated General Contractors of Vermont. That was included.
And then reference to the schedule for the creation of at least 600 additional units. Was there a discussion that you recall you were in committee for with respect to any mapping or suggestions on where the housing is located?
Where this housing would be located
Yeah.
specifically?
Yeah, is that part of?
I don't recall a conversation when I was in the room about getting specific there or asking for additional information about where the housing specifically would be. Presumably the committee could get to that level of detail if you specifically wanted to include some language to that effect.
Just was curious what may or may not have taken place on that front. And then
There was, and I would say there was conversation among the committee about housing that, the Housing Conservation Board has funded, over the past years for, supportive housing, et cetera. But I don't recall there being any conversation about, okay, you're developing a schedule for the creation of these housing. We also want to discuss where that housing is then subsequently going to be located. I don't recall any conversation about that.
And then a final question with respect to the report date. They're meeting on or before July 15th with the report due in November. Seems like a relatively short timeline. I would take from that there's probably already work or conversations among some of these parties that have been taking place such that they'll be able to meet that timeline. Do you remember, is there anything you can add that you may recall from being in the room for any conversation on that?
Yeah, I would say it is my experience. This is a very aggressive time frame.
Yeah.
There was some testimony about some work that has been done, my understanding with some potential sponsorship from HUD, et cetera, but it may not be available, et cetera. I would probably defer you to Susan with the Development Disabilities Council for further conversation about that because she was speaking to the House General Committee on that, and I'm probably not the best person to
Sure, I can do
speak
that.
to that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, just, I'll follow up on your third question here. Where'd they come up with the number 600?
I believe that is based on previous work that has been done in this space.
So there were reports that were disseminated and data that associated to where they got that number 600 from?
That is my understanding. I will be clear, this is a new space for me. As you all recall, housing is kind of a new portfolio for me. As I've learned, I believe there was a study done, study may not be the exact right word, coming from Act 186 in 2022. You all funded some work done in this space to look at different housing models that other states have done. And so there is a report, I believe it was 2023, that came out.
And we
And
can
I,
find that and send it to the committee.
Yeah.
There was a report that was commissioned, as Cameron noted, that is a very lengthy report that actually might address some of the geographic. It was a housing needs assessment for this population, very specific. So we'll find a link to that report.
I think that provides a lot of the foundation.
Yeah, foundation for how many units, and it gives more data on where the needs are, what supports are needed. It's actually a really thoughtful report that I encourage members to read. Representative Eastis, and I think Noyes.
I just had a couple of questions related to this here. Or probably would be interested to hear from Jubilee. Commonly, we sort of, it seems like we're commonly recommending that there be someone on these sorts of committees that has lived experience.
Mhm.
And I don't know whether that would be appropriate in a moment like this. Maybe it's not the right place.
I will say,
It's possible that one of these people might have lived experience, but it doesn't name it out.
so the committee did have some conversation about that. And if you may, I'm gonna go up to the study committee in the section immediately preceding this, which is section 5. They specifically added, and forgive me, I'm scrolling all the way up to page 13, if you want to follow along. Under this committee, they put, so this is a committee looking at universal design standards for residential housing. And they put here, committee shall be composed of the following members with preference for appointment of members with lived experience. If I recall, the conversation was under this study committee, section 6, going back to what we're talking about here. There were specific members of the committee who were from, the families that, work with these individuals or have family members who are individuals with disabilities. So they were, I think, a little more confident that there would be some individuals on the committee with some lived experience. Obviously, you all could specifically request similar language be added, to the membership to ensure that to the extent more members have lived experience. So just highlighting that the committee did, kind of discuss that, and there was a consensus of the committee to want there to be people with lived experiences on both of these study committees.
Representative Noyes and then Donahue.
So we don't have possession of this, is that correct?
I
So
believe
we're
yeah.
not making changes. This is more informational for us, or
I'm not
are we
sure
making
about the
recommendations?
I think we could certainly ask, yeah, right.
No, I'm always concerned that we forget about smaller development in rural areas where,
This where, so.
Yeah.
right? And so where, back to one of the earlier questions, and just, we tend to always end up Chittenden County, more populated areas where development are obviously easier than in more rural parts of our state where we're missing the infrastructure. But still, the need is there. It's where
It
people
could
live,
be
it's where
part
their
of the-
families are.
Part of a look into,
Yeah.
part of the report.
Yeah, to your point, I was thinking as Doug was speaking a moment ago, that rather than get specific about where they need to be, it might be some guidance about where across the state they need to be. So it's not very specific, but making sure that it's not in one place.
Right.
I would highlight, this is, as I read the language, it is to develop a state plan for the creation of these units. It's not funding them specifically, so presumably this would come back to you all for, further development and future work. However, I don't see any issue if you wanted to get a little more explicit there about ensuring that the state plan is creating these units in geographic areas across the state, geographic diverse areas, et cetera. I'm pretty sure there's language we could pull that we could draft to put in if you also choose, either as individual amendment on the floor or, et cetera.
Done language like that, I think.
Back to the people with lived That has become a broader, a more and more broadly used term, to the extent that I think it probably needs to be articulated, lived experience of what in various cases. Because we all have lived experience of something, lots of things, as a matter of fact. So, even this, I guess this is even on our topic, but going back to the one you were just looking at, the lived experience of what? I would think it might include of being elderly, and needing accessibility of individuals who may use wheelchairs, there's that. Anyway,
Yeah. Point well taken. The more explicit and clear you can be, then the easier it is for the public and us all to interpret and implement.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm hearing that folks may want to make some suggestions for changes. So I don't know the process for that.
I guess, we could talk about it, and if there was consensus around it, we could ask the committee if they would be willing to. At what stage is it
Yeah,
for
what
them?
stage, where are they with that?
My understanding is it's in Ways and Means.
Oh, so they already voted.
It's
already
Oh, yes, my apologies. House General voted this version out.
Okay, so it's Ways and Means.
So it is in Ways and Means.
So it would be an amendment by members of this committee, whether it was all members or some members. I think we'd want to chat with,
Yeah,
informally chat with Housing General
Yeah.
Services first, but assuming that they were comfortable with it, that technically it would need to be presented as a floor amendment.
okay, well, thank you. That was helpful to understand what they have passed and what stage it's at right now. We'll update our committee chair and proceed as we decide.
Absolutely. Let me know if you all would just, like some changes as we discussed, and happy to pull something together. Good.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, committee, we have some time. We can do reports. We still had a couple of reports that we had not finished.